the pleasure to opening the second, hopefully equally exciting day about the EIT and our model to become for, I think, the stakeholders in Europe. And we are really thrilled that you are so much interested, and we are even more thrilled that some of you have been willing to get up in time and being here in the lecture hall. I have the privilege to one more time go into the topic which is dominating these 2 days, namely talking about the EIT. And please don't get me wrong, you will learn most about the EIT if you are listening today to the CEOs of the EIT, but also to our director in learning how they in praxis are interacting and really building up this organization. Thus, I have the time a little bit more to focus on the topic of innovation. There is a term coined which is called the cha-cha-cha theory of scientific discoveries. And as you have seen, quite naturally, I took out 3 examples of life science, which is closest to me. So if you take the discovery of the Mendelian rules, which has been changing the world a lot, it's called a category charge. So it is a link between 2 things, and in between is a black box, and nobody could explain it. And as we know, it was Gregor Mendel in the monastery of Brünn who undeciphered the rules, how I think, so to say, chromosomes are inhering, so to say, the genetic information in making the children looking like the parents. A quite different example is what Watson and Crick, I think nearly 50 years ago or 60 years ago, did in Cambridge. I think somehow all the puzzle bits were on the table. They had the idea it must be a helix. I think it was Chargaff who has put the base pairing rules together, and I think there have been other hints that I think basically you need to duplicate this molecule because you have to split to the daughter cells again the same genetic information. And everybody understood at this time that basically DNA is a carrier of genetic information. So as we know from this famous book, The Double Helix, written by James Watson, they were really doing all kind of tricks, networking, maybe also a little bit pinching data from other people, and put together these fantastic double helical models, which has revolutionized biology, if you want so, our view on life. Penicillin, in contrast, is an example of a chance. I think Alexander Fleming, whom I mentioned yesterday, he came back from his vacation and he saw on a Petri dish that there was a bacteria-free zone, and in the center of the zone was a kind of a mold growing. And I think then he was putting the right, so to say, conclusion forward and saying this must secrete something which is inhibiting the bacteria to grow, and that was, so to say, the discovery of penicillin. Still, out in the world is enormous disturbances about how discovery is linked to innovation. We have discovery, we have invention, we have translation processes, and we have innovation. And I think I have to say, unfortunately, these terms are put into a cocktail, and I think it's mixed up sometimes by people you should expect they would know, and the whole thing is somehow, if you want to, consumed under the umbrella of innovation. Innovation is really something different. It is really carrying and discovery or innovation forward with societal impact. It can be revenues, it can be profit, it can change the life, it can be for the benefit of the life, but it comes back to people. So I think please don't use the word innovation if you talk about discovery, invention, or even translation. There have been many thoughts in the history of economical science how this all goes about, and I think the classical view still in many countries is you have academic research, you go to basic research, you go to applied research, and on the other end, I think you have the added value of having a new generation of cars dropping out or whatsoever. While this is still a very strongly a strong paradigm, and sometimes I'm afraid it's still seen by many people the way you should create from academic research to added value, a chain. I was already, I think, something 100 years later, that basically Adam Smith recognized that there are these disruptive, so to say, vertical infiltration into this chain of, I think, value creation, and I think making an, so to say, a difference. Today, we know it's even more complex. We know that the whole thing is a network, and you need, as we have been pointing out a couple of times yesterday, we need really to go into the knowledge triangle and even more to get all the players together, which is really creating the value of innovation. Also, this is interesting. I think we are still trapped in the paradigm of the Renaissance genius. I think we believe, and to some degree it has been like this, that some single people have really made the impact in changing the view in the way I have been discussing it before in the cha-cha-cha theory, in making a change. But already the double helix is an example where we all know, if we are reading in the history of ideas, there have been, for example, this wonderful X-ray refraction data from Anthony Franklin. Some people believe she should have got as well, or she has deserved as well the Nobel Prize for the double helix. And if you read the book, The Double Helix of James Watson, and this is his honesty in this book, it was a kind of stitching together all the information floating around. There were enough, so to say, sparing partners to discuss all the different puzzle bits which were laying on the table. And I think it is very difficult at the end of the day to say, but the ownership of this project certainly was with Jim Watson and with Francis Crick, which I'm belonging to a generation of molecular biologists. I still had the privilege to know both of them in person. I think James Watson, of course, is still alive. So it has only recently been discovered that this is not the reality of innovation and discovery. I think you need huge networks, and I think when in my field in molecular biology we got the first complete sequences of the whole organism like humans or bacteria, we saw with a sudden that we have these extreme complex networks which goes then also in science management if you want to keep them all together. I think for the benefit of one goal to say to unify, I think the discovery process, which I think in the end can also lead to an innovation. So we get many calls from different people and saying we have to change something about, I think, how we interact with each other. And I guess to make it short, for example, Gottfried Schatz, I think the former president of the Swiss Research Council, he says one of the biggest dilemmas to form these networks is really communication. And I have to say, if I'm sometimes attending conferences of my former field, which is molecular microbiology, and I see all my colleagues still talking in these abstract acronyms, I sometimes feel that scientific conferences are invented not to communicate, to misunderstand each other. It's maybe a hard judgment I'm making, but I think we know that even top scientists in their very specific fields isolate themselves. On the other hand, we get very clear calls from industry like, what do you need? Early fund stage ventures, we need support innovative companies, invest into education, celebrate entrepreneurs. So you see other people say, be very concrete if you drive innovation. What's interesting that this young I think she is at Harvard, this young Harvard professor, she has writing a very nice article in Nature where she has been saying, the most important thing for me as a young scientist was to learn management to better use the resources in my department. Okay, and again, I think we have other people who tell us basically that to become really game-changing, we have to create an environment, and this is a quote of our former chairman, Martin Schurmans. One dilemma is to learn to respect each other. And I don't want to go into details. I think we put this presentation in the public domain. If you go in a pure academic environment, these are quite different incentive structures. I mean, in the end, I think, thank you so much, in the end, it's curiosity and prestige. And on the other hand, I think you create value in a company. So you have to make these people to communicate each other. So this has been told to you yesterday. We like to overcome this by really creating the, I think, knowledge triangle, getting all the players together and having the entrepreneur in the center. To the topic of entrepreneur, I think there are many things you could state, but I think the most important thing is to understand she or he is the real transformer of taking this knowledge. And there are smart quotes of Joseph Schumpeter, who has defined what is an entrepreneur. There's a very nice quote, which I think is from our friend Richard. I think he has been basically supporting us in organizing, Richard Hudson, many conferences. And he once said to me when I was delayed to respond to him, I said, Alex, I excused myself that Bill Gates would visit our company. And I said, oh, I know Bill Gates, he said, and you can read here what he said. Dear Alex, he was in the same class like at university, me, but he was a martyr and he didn't graduate, okay? So I think it tells you a little bit where we are coming from if we are looking at the topic of entrepreneurship. So what can we do with public money to get this knowledge triangle growing together? And I think the only way we can do it, the only way we can achieve this is that we give the money exactly there where it is needed most. And this is really the valley of death where you have to push something forward. And this is what we do believe is a task of the EIT. I think all the nice things you have heard yesterday would never have occurred if we would not have been really making the call, getting applications, getting business plans, and deciding at the end of the day, putting the first money into these groups of people, these 5, 6 hotspots which came together to build the kicks. You should be aware we started later. Okay. So I think she was cutting my time down, but I think I will terminate in a moment, but I think we started, so to say, 5 or 10 minutes later. So just to conclude at this point, if you spend money in innovation, you have to spend it very wisely. It is pretty clear you need money in basic research, you need money for growth in companies, you need money for translation research, so you have money to develop a prototype which goes from the first concept idea into becoming the product or the service. But a very important pivotal kickoff set is really how can you ever make people becoming entrepreneurial? And I think it is interesting that the seed money going in a fresh company, whether this is 1 million or 6 million or 20 million, this is in the life cycle of a company the most important money invested. So we see that the EIT money given into the kicks should really play this role, and we have to spend it very wisely, and just let's not be arrogant, we have to learn how to do it in best practice. So this has been shown to you yesterday. Our mission is at the end of the day then really to building this EIT with the entrepreneur in the center. And I guess, as you know, this executive organs which we are creating, the KICs, the innovation factories, they are our executive organs. Only from them we can learn how the whole thing is functioning. And I guess, as you know, we are up and running them, and they are showing first tangible results, but this is really to be watched whether they become what we like they should become, owned by all these interesting stakeholders, and making really, hopefully, a global difference, and also giving Europe a chance, I think, to get innovation back into the center of the continent. I conclude with 2 slides, which I like to allude to another important function I do believe the EIT has. And this is, if you have an existing value chain in producing products, science, services, there is a tendency you are going more and more in the streamline. And I think as a biologist, it means you have less and less diversification. I think in the end, you have monoculture, which you have, for example, in modern agricultural life. And I think this interesting chart basically is showing that basically the ideas from which you can, so to say, take your inspiration and do something new is getting smaller and smaller. Let's say if all car manufacturers of the world believe that the classical diesel and gasoline-driven engine, as it is engineered more than 100 years ago, with all the fantastic modification, is the only way to really pull forward a car, you may exempt, you make empty, so to say, really the reservoir you have to get something new out in making a step change. So you need once in a while events which really help, so to say, to put everything upside down and hoping that there is still enough diversification from which you can select on. And I think this is seen by a theorist in economy, Giles, in that you need ecosystems. Ecosystems where people really can, so to say, come together, and I think really thinking about new ways of solving problems. And I think if they work, and if they are up and running, and if they are not only in academic laboratories, if they're fetching out to the reality, if they're really coming to the people, then these ecosystems, and I think this is what you see basically here, they can become disruptive, and they are capable basically to form, I think, creativity which leads to new innovation, which can really take a dramatic change. So I think I like to summarize here at this stage and saying that the EIT and the KICS have two functions. I think one is really trying to strengthen the ecosystems we have in Europe to create innovation. Number two, we are a learning institute, acquiring knowledge, we are giving back. And my hope and my vision, and this concerns my two last slides basically, are really that I think the KICS and the EIT may help in one or the other instance to become disruptive in really contributing something which makes a change. I think I end here, and I think I just skip over the slides, and I thank you for your attention. I just also want to say we have an extra guest from the Parliament today, Mr. Yonis Zouarkalas, and I really welcome you to the conference. You were yesterday evening already at the dinner, and I think, I hope in this spirit we have another interesting day here today in Copenhagen. Thank you so much.